Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Sarah Rand, and I'm excited to be your moderator and host today for this live stream. I am from the Regional Educational Laboratory Midwest. I'll tell you more about who we are after we watch the documentary. But to start, I just want to provide a brief overview of the documentary we are about to watch. We'll watch the documentary. It's about 27 minutes long. And then for the second half of this hour we have together, we'll have a discussion with a fantastic panel of educators and experts. So this documentary was produced by the Regional Educational Laboratory Midwest and Detroit Public TV in 2020. REL Midwest is a federally funded research lab that serves 7 states in the Midwest region, including Michigan. We conduct applied research, training, and coaching to improve academic outcomes for students. We also do extensive communications and outreach work to engage audiences in the content and produce documentaries like this one in partnership with public television stations across the Midwest. So this documentary is all about how districts and schools can create supportive working environments for teachers. You can watch this via our live stream on YouTube, via the Detroit Public TV event page, or on Facebook Live. If you have questions or comments, you can put them in the Facebook Live space. And now I will turn it over and we will watch the documentary and we'll come back after in about half an hour. Please do put questions or comments in the chat. We'll be tracking those and we can address those during our panel discussion. Thanks so much for joining us.
Transforming the Culture of Education, Improving Teacher Working Conditions is a co-production of Regional Educational Laboratory Midwest and Detroit Public Television, with funding provided by REL Midwest through funds provided by the U.S. Department of Education's Institute of Education Sciences.
I think teachers want to be in a culture and an environment that supports continuous learning and allows them to get better at helping their students.
So when you come into a place that's colorful and the people are smiling and you feel confident, it makes you want to come to work and feel good about it.
I think that school leadership, teacher leadership, and professional development are 3 key components to building a successful school.
When you feel like the leader, you feel like you can make changes, you can have a voice, you can do bigger things.
Regional Educational Laboratory, or REL Midwest, builds partnerships between the states, local school districts, and other local education stakeholders. One of Michigan Department of Education's key objectives is to have a qualified teacher in every classroom to ensure that the supply and demand of teachers in the state is aligned with the needs of local schools and districts.
Most teachers, when they leave the school, they're leaving because something wasn't provided for them. So improving teacher leadership and school leadership, making sure teachers have what they need with the professional development, having those adequate resources, making sure their concerns are heard.
There's been lots of studies that looked at these working conditions for teachers. And those favorable working conditions are associated with favorable teacher outcomes. One of those outcomes that's really important is teacher retention. And we know without good teacher retention, it's really difficult to achieve good teaching and learning.
We also know from research that every year that a student is in a classroom experiencing learning from an excellent teacher, a well-trained and supported teacher, that affects them for the rest of their lives, basically. So investments in teaching and leadership make a profound difference.
At the end of the day, the district is going to be it will only be as good as it's able to develop teachers and leaders who can address the demands of the profession. And people need to feel celebrated. They need to feel supported.
Basically, you want to feel comfortable where you are. You have all the proper resources that you need to be able to make sure that you are giving your students all the information that they need to be successful, and as well as being confident within ourselves to be able to come to school prepared and having everything that we need to have in place.
So I started off at like 22, fresh out of college, as a lot of these new teachers are, and really excited to work with kids. And then I can vividly remember thinking, what am I doing? And I remember one of the teachers that was on the team saying, well, have you checked the manual? And I was like, there's a manual? Are you kidding me? I look back on that now and think, like, what are we doing if we're not doing better than that? And that's where I fell in love with the research behind teaching and what it looks like to be a better teacher and challenge myself in the classroom. When I became a principal, I really brought that background to this role and recognized that my job as a building leader was going to be to create those opportunities for new teachers and for old teachers.
According to the research, principals have a profound influence on teacher recruitment and retention. So if we're talking about improving teacher working conditions, whether that's the professional development or evaluation of a teacher in a classroom, school principals and other administrators in the building are the ones that will be doing the work.
When it comes to a school leader, you want someone who is a dynamic visionary. And Visker, of course, we're an urban school community. And so with that, it's very important to have a school leader that focuses on transforming the school culture and transforming our school into a successful school.
School leaders have the responsibility to work with individual teachers to improve their instructional practices, and that reinforces equity in the school.
I'm just going to be honest. When you're dealing with the partnership school and dealing with a school community that focuses on meeting students where they are, you do have challenges with teacher retention. And I'm just being transparent. And the reason being is that the workload is so heavy, but the impact is so great. And so we want to make sure that we foster an understanding for those who are coming in.
It means looking at data with teachers and engaging them in conversations about which students are thriving and which students are not. Which types of students, in terms of their demographics, are moving forward in the school and which ones are not. And then, most importantly, how can we help those students who may not be thriving to do better?
And I think there's been this real shift over the past several years, having the school leader be really more steeped in thinking about setting a vision for what education and learning and the curriculum is going to look like in my school, and then implementing strategies and practices that support that.
We want to follow your vision and your goals, and we want to feel confident in doing that.
Principals are partially responsible for social and emotional support for teachers as well.
Teachers need to feel safe so that they can feel comfortable with learning and exploring in our learning environment. And so I think that that's critical when it comes to managing a school culture and climate, is really making sure that they feel safe and secure in the environment that they're in.
She has to be transparent and honest with open communication, especially coming to our district, because if you come to somewhere that you think it's glamour and glitters and gold and you don't receive that, you're going to be kind of upset. And so you're not going to be able to retain that teacher. But once you know that, and then you know that you're going to be supported and you're going to want to be able to stay.
We, through the interview process, are trying to be as transparent as we can about what the challenges are. But then what does the school environment have to look like? In every building that we have a calming room for students. But we've also converted the teachers' lounges. We have replaced the lunch table with reclining chairs. It's a Zen-like, yoga-like environment that when they walk in, we want you to be able to relax. You can't pour from an empty glass. And so our building level leadership, the teacher leadership, the expanded leadership team supports mindfulness.
They do check-ins with us just to see if we are okay. What's going on? Is there anything going on at home? Or is there anything I can do to assist you?
If we're going to hang on to principals and encourage them to do their work to improve teacher working conditions, it's important that we recognize that leadership is a team effort. And central office administrators play an important role in that.
You have to build and cultivate, leadership in your building so that you don't have to be left with trying to do it all by yourself. And that creates buy-in, that creates ownership for our teachers. The advice I would give a school leader is just being transparent, having an open line of communication. Communication is key with your teacher leaders as well as your staff. Asking your staff, what do you need? Is there professional development I can get for you or provide to help you become a better teacher?
I originally was thinking maybe going to become a principal, and then I kind of shifted to reading specialist and found that really is a leadership role to be a reading specialist. And so then I was able to work while I was a reading specialist in another district kind of as a coach and really work with the students part of the time, but also with the teachers, and just start helping teachers to see how to be more practitioners and more diagnostic. And so that was just really rewarding to see, like, I could do more than just help my set of kids that I'm assigned to for the year, but I can actually help other teachers to do the same thing for their kids, and then you have more of a systemic benefit.
One thing that certainly we need in this time is serious dialogue about our own work, about our own biases, and how we can support kids in new and different ways. Who is leading that charge? It's teacher leaders within the school who are in touch with the community, who are in touch with kids and understand the challenges that families are going through.
At Public Impact, we feel like the teacher profession is in a bit of a crisis when it comes to both attracting teachers into the profession and retaining them. And so it's our belief that unless we're able to create strong pathways within teaching, we won't be able to retain them once they're in the profession. So teacher leadership to us feels like a vital part of the future of the education profession.
I feel like when teachers have autonomy to make decisions, be respected and listened to by their leaders, and have the ability to have their ideas funded and bring those ideas to fruition, that makes people want to stay.
I think that's a really important piece with, obviously, with teacher retention, to just have that like feeling of being part of a team and having an opportunity to be a leader.
We know that teachers who have leadership opportunities oftentimes actually are better inclined to stay in school. And we also know that teachers learn better from other teachers.
In part because of the Board of Professional Teaching Standards, we're building a pipeline for teacher leadership that has allowed teachers to remain in the classroom and continue to work, so that they have the opportunity to influence the next generation of teachers who are coming into the building.
The role itself is basically, you're still going to be a part-time teacher, but a lot of your job responsibilities have to do with supporting a team of teachers in the building through embedded professional development, coaching, modeling, co-teaching, those kind of activities. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you're responsible for the growth of all the students on your team. So not only the students you directly teach, but also the students you support through your team teachers.
I teach math. I may model a strategy for my mentee to help her service her students. I may give suggestions on how to differentiate instruction so they can help their students to close that achievement gap.
I think it really just creates a positive attitude and a supportive system. So for a new teacher, whether they're new in their career or just new to our school, it really feels like I can do this. I'm not alone.
Any new teacher's like, yay, this is so helpful because I need all the help I can get because we're just like surviving sometimes.
As a teacher leader myself, it's very imperative that I reach out to the teachers who need that extra help to let them know that I'm here from them and to make sure that they're receiving the proper education and the equipment that they need to be successful.
In schools, there are informal and formal leadership opportunities that principals can provide. In terms of informal leadership, I think it's public recognition of experience and excellence that the principal can do. Formal teacher leadership, of course, is a position within a school, and it's recognized and paid for.
Having teacher leaders is really helpful because it's not possible for our administration to be everywhere at once, but we can pass this information along. So it really provides kind of that sense of network. Like you have this group where we're all kind of working in this together.
So it just gives everybody a voice. I think it also ensures clear expectations from administration we have to be able to make sure everyone's on the same page, bring our grade level together as a team so that each individual class isn't an isolated class.
Every grade level has a voice, and we're trying to bring that all back to be able to make those decisions to support everyone.
Principals are responsible for making that system work. So how do they do that? They engage teacher leaders.
So when you talk about teacher leaders, you're looking at teachers who are dynamic in their craft. And so it's important for school leaders to build those teacher leaders and make sure that they have the support and the guidance that they need so that we can maximize our learning experiences for our students.
We work with districts to help sort of uncover those competencies, things like achievement drive and impact and influence and persistence and all these things that help people be successful when they're on the ground working with their teams. So improving the selection process is a very quick, easy way for schools to improve their teacher leadership work.
Our principal, Mrs. German, she sees the leadership in amongst her staff. Once she sees that, she kind of probes them to do a little bit more. In the very first day of school, teachers can join different committees. For instance, I'm a chair on a committee. I'm a co-chair. So she gets everybody involved to be on some type of committee.
We really encourage teacher leaders to be very data focused. And so one of the other aspects of getting the job is that they're able to prove that they can collect data, use data, analyze data. And so with the support of the school leader, they're constantly sort of making sure that if they're moving kids, they're moving all kids and that equity is a part of that work.
My responsibilities as being a teacher leader is to make sure that I am staying abreast on the best practices, that I am supporting my teachers in my grade level, being able to make sure that I'm reaching my deadlines, as well as keeping the principal abreast of what's going on and making sure that we're increasing the student achievement.
I think the first data that we always look at is this equity lens of like, are we distributing our teacher leaders in a way that we're reaching all students, particularly students whose needs haven't been well served?
And so when it comes to teacher leadership and how it will impact student success is great. We were ranked low in student performance in the past, but putting those different components in place, building teacher capacity and making sure that they're prepared for our learners and seeing student success skyrocket. I think all of those things has helped us tremendously.
I'm the superintendent of the River Rouge School District. I'm a child of poverty. And so we all went into schools that were in low-income communities. And my personal experience, I was a gifted student, but my friends weren't. And so I watched how the teachers treated them. They weren't bad kids, but they were coming from homes that just could not provide them with the basics. And so they were misunderstood. And so the reason I went into education was because I said that there were a lot of young boys and girls who didn't have an opportunity because the luck of the draw. I couldn't wait to become a teacher because I said I'd get 30 students an hour who I have the opportunity to shape and mold. Then I said I need something bigger, so I can't wait to become a principal because now I get a building. And once that happened, the natural, order of things was I can't wait to become a superintendent so we can create those conditions for children to excel, that regardless to their birthright or namesake, you'll be given an opportunity because we're going to provide you with a highly skilled workforce that is committed to seeing you get better because they themselves are committed to getting better.
Teachers who remain in the profession for a long time, research indicates, have continued to learn and have continued to engage in professional development and question their practice and begin to ask questions about which kids they're serving best and how can they grow.
There's a big body of research that shows how professional learning can impact student outcomes and teacher practice.
Professional development is key for all stakeholders that we have in our building.
So there's a lot of thinking and research that we can bring to bear in school systems around what kind of content expertise we can build and grow in the teacher workforce. But there's also this other piece of it around adult learning and like how people get better at getting better and how we can help school systems design and implement teacher professional development that we know is structured in a way that where the learning will stick with the adult and where we know that it will grow their capacity and it can be sustained in a way that they can use it in the classroom.
That is the types of conversations that we're having as principals and teachers together for the betterment of our kids. Doing job-embedded professional development where principals are sitting with teachers, looking at data and providing ideas and tips and tools and research to advance the teacher's instructional practice.
There is a lot of professional development out there that's routine and sort of sit and get and one-shot workshops. We've all heard about these, and the research shows that in large part those don't work for lots of reasons. So we try and think about how we can take research and lessons learned from the field into other systems to implement professional development that is more aligned with what we know works and helps learning happen and be sustained.
Professional learning should really be focused on the why and the how. So what are the reasons behind this professional learning? Why do we need to learn this? And then how do you do it? So just really following those pieces and then having an opportunity to practice that in their classrooms and use that material.
It's professional development that's geared towards our students, something that I can take back into the classroom and it's going to help my kids be successful. For example, with the different levels of learning with our kids, it's important that I differentiate instruction. So having that type of training will help me take it back into the classroom and help me close those achievement gaps with my children.
We definitely want to meet our students where they are. And in our district, that's what we do. We have professional developments that's geared to our students with social emotional learning.
That if you're not designing professional learning to support teachers to get at some of these things, it's going to be hard for them to move the needle on like persistent problems of practice.
2 years ago, we started to implement a little bit of choose your own PD, and I would share out a Google Doc and let teachers basically write in there, like, this is what I need, this is what I am struggling with right now. We've really been working hard to bring the PD just here. We have some really smart people. How can we use each other to build our own experts?
Probably the best one I've ever seen, like professional development wise, are classroom learning labs.
Classroom Learning Lab really provides a really powerful opportunity to invite teachers to have other teachers come to their classrooms, observe, and ask questions and do a lot of reflecting and having reflecting conversations so that teachers can kind of grow from each other's practices. And it kind of reminds me of when you're a doctor, right? And you're in the surgical theater, right? You're down below and other doctors are up above and they're watching you through that window and they're learning and they're growing. That's exactly what a Classroom Learning Lab offers for our teachers.
Anytime we've done classroom learning labs, the teachers just say, oh my gosh, this was the best professional development experience I've ever gone through. Not only the people that are the lead teachers at that time, but the participants that are coming in and watching everything from the pre-meeting to the execution of the class time of the learning lab to the debriefing session afterwards. Everybody just gets an awful lot of things they get to take away from that.
And teachers are just excited. You know, it answered a problem that we had. And we also do surveys after our professional development. And so, you know, part of that will be talking about what went well, what they liked of that, and then talking about what they'd like to see in the future. And so really to be able to take that survey from them and look at what that need is for the future has helped develop those pieces too. So I feel like that's my role, is to make sure that happens.
We do have perception surveys of our teachers. We use that as a process to gain understanding of what professional development that they need. And so then once we go through progress monitoring and observations, we can see, is this really working? You know, what other challenges are our teachers having? What can we improve on? And that helps us in making decisions for future professional learning, as well as giving our teachers more support.
Advice to improve professional development for district and school leaders would be really taking the time up front to isolate where your students and staff need to improve. And it's okay for it to be a really specific thing, as long as you feel confident that this is the root cause of why my kids aren't advancing. and really paying attention to those new teachers. They get assignments that are the highest need and they are the least prepared for. So thinking about how you can really double down on professional learning for new teachers in high needs classrooms.
I think COVID-19 has really rattled our world in a big way. It's definitely impacted everyone, and education, is not exempt from that.
I think we've really shocked the education system in a lot of ways, and teachers are responding to those shocks, but it's an extremely stressful time.
Having a really strong teacher leader in place with a relatively small team to support, we've seen in our work in the spring, was really, really important. So they had sort of a lifeline to reach out to as they were moving towards remote education, to try to work with the teacher leader around how they were going to do that and continue the excellent instructional practices that they had done before.
Opportunity to collaborate is probably even more important than it has been before. So the teachers can learn from one another how they're tackling these difficult times and what they're doing to help one another and to help their students.
We do a lot of meeting and planning all together. So that allows them to, share their concerns and offer pushback, knowing that they're concerned about you. And they're doing a check-in just to see how you're feeling. How's it going? Do you need any help with this? What can I get you? Though it just helps with the day and helps make my job easier.
Our focus countywide was actually on that social emotional piece and really being super mindful of that work. So we were learning from a psychologist on really how to welcome our students back and to be a support for them and helping our students cope with that and just being that kind of love and support.
When teachers leave, it has a negative impact on students who are left behind because there is no continuity. The other negative consequence of that is that teachers who are left behind are left to maybe having to deal with greater workload, or they have, to pick up extra responsibilities outside of their classroom.
It's important to have a vision for your school. Key components to building a successful school is having a great school leader that is the visionary, but also having great teacher leaders that can actually support the school leader's vision and be able to support our staff and be creative inside the classroom, as well as the professional development that is in place for all stakeholders.
Making sure that we value the people that we work with and that work for us and work with us, and making sure that you value those people, because everybody brings something wonderful to the table, whether it's a student or a teacher or a support staff member, you name it, brings something that's crucial to our district.
Transforming the Culture of Education, Improving Teacher Working Conditions is a co-production of Regional Educational Laboratory Midwest and Detroit Public Television, with funding provided by REL Midwest through funds provided by the U.S. Department of Education's Institute of Education Sciences.
Great. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. That was a fantastic documentary. Thank you so much for watching it with us. If you came in partway through, we can share the link. It's posted on YouTube, so you can watch it anytime, and you're welcome to share with your colleagues who maybe couldn't make this event. So to start, I'd like to introduce myself and our panelists that are with us today. I am a senior communications specialist at the Regional Education Lab Midwest, the partner that produced this documentary. I was one of the producers in partnership with Detroit Public TV. And I work to make our research relevant and accessible to practitioners and policymakers through documentaries like this one, videos, events, blogging, workshops, and presentations. And I collaborate with public TV stations to produce these kind of documentaries and host screenings and workshops like this one. I'll invite the panelists now to come on screen, and I'll introduce you all. Many of them you will recognize, or all of them you'll recognize from the documentary. Dr. Derek R. Coleman has more than 25 years of experience as an educator and change agent. He's been superintendent of the River Rouge School District in River Rouge for 9 years and previously served for 4 years as an assistant superintendent in Detroit Public School District. Under his leadership, the River Rouge School District completed an unprecedented recovery from many challenges, and River Rouge schools are now a magnet for families that are seeking quality programming in a traditionally underserved urban community. Carol Dawson was an elementary teacher for 13 years and has been an elementary school principal for 14. She is currently serving as the K-4 principal for Grant Public Schools in West Michigan, and she has a master's in education from GVSU and her administrator certification from GVSU. Her passion as a principal is to create a learning atmosphere conducive to students having the tools they need to be wherever they want to be, whatever they want to be when they grow up, and supporting her staff to help them create this learning atmosphere. Lucy Steiner, also welcome. Thank you for joining us. Started her career in education as a high school English teacher and is now the senior vice president at Public Impact, which is a national research and consulting firm. For the past 7 years, she's been leading the team at Public Impact that helps schools and districts nationwide implement something called opportunity culture staffing models, which extend the reach of excellent teachers to more students for more pay within regular school budgets. And last but not least, we have Dr. Natalia Gnedko-Berry. She is a senior researcher at the American Institutes for Research and REL Midwest, with expertise in study design and methodology and substantive background in K-12 education and teacher quality. In her current role with REL Midwest, she serves as the research liaison for our Alliance to Improve Teacher Preparation in Michigan and co-leads a research study of certified Michigan teachers who do not teach. That study was actually just released a few weeks ago, and we are currently producing a documentary with Detroit Public TV on that exact topic that will come out later this fall. So without further ado, let's dive into some questions here. To our audience members, if you have questions or comments, you can put them in the chat on Facebook Live and we will address them. But I'm going to go ahead and kick us off with a question that I had prepared for Carol and Derek. My question is, how have you seen other schools and districts in Michigan create supportive teacher working conditions?
So we just really, I wanted to focus on the work that started with our school through the HIL grant. So HIL stands for High Impact Leadership, and we started working with that program, which is a joint effort between Western Michigan University and the Michigan Department of Education through some grant writing that they were able to secure the funding for that. So there are, about 150 schools that are involved in that right now, and really digging into that principle of building shared leadership, teacher leaders within districts, where principals are really encouraged by their coach to identify who those people would be in the building, and then do a ton of work around developing those leaders and developing the principal to accept that, they're not the only one that can be a good leader in the building, and to really just create an atmosphere for these professional development pieces and that work to come together for a school district. So I think that that's been a really big piece for a lot of districts across Michigan over the past 4 years or so, and seen some really great results from that work.
And so if you want to create dynamic students, you need dynamic teachers. And so the state has placed a major emphasis and provided funding to address professional development. I think that something that has risen to the top over the last 2 years, and the pandemic fell in the midst of it, was how do you address the social emotional learning for young people? And again, you cannot pour from an empty glass. And so our teachers need to have the tools necessary to allow them to be successful to address the challenges that are inherent with this pandemic, but also, as I stated previously, poverty is a pandemic. So I've seen a lot of focus on self-care. I've seen a lot of focus on mindset and mindfulness. We've done a great job, and I've seen other school districts do a phenomenal job in celebrations. People want to feel like they matter. They want to know that you care. They want to feel heard. They want to feel appreciated. But most importantly, they want to be empowered. And so beyond the professional development around the social emotional learning, schools are doing a phenomenal job in developing teacher leaders. And that reduces a huge burden on the school administrator, because that's a singular team that may be 2 or 3 people. And when that work is spread around, you'll see that our students are going to be the greatest beneficiaries of it, because our teachers, again, are allowed to show exactly what they can do and given the opportunities to grow.
Thank you. That's really helpful to hear. Another question for Carol and Derek. What challenges has your district faced in creating supportive working conditions for teachers? And what are ways that you've overcome those challenges? Maybe it'd be helpful to hear a little bit about pre-pandemic and also during the last year as well.
Yeah, I think that the biggest enemy of, teachers being more effective or trying new things is that time limitation that school districts face. Teachers put in a ton of effort every day, and I would say have one of the most taxing jobs for that emotional drain. Really, like when you think about who walks in your door every day and what needs they might have when they get there, the teacher's ready to handle all of that. And it can be anything, and you might just not be prepared for that. And so I think like one of the barriers that we've had through all of this is just, how do you create time pockets for teachers to be able to get together, think together, talk about ideas, explore what that could look like, do the planning around making an idea come true. And, I think a lot of times we take for granted the power of thinking and the power of just empty time to put that to task. And so, our district has really worked hard at creating PLC time. With the pandemic in place, we were able to work with our Board of Education and obviously the loosening up from the state for those minutes. And so we were able to have some extra time at the end of the day where teachers could do some planning around all of this new job that they would have to face with the remote learning on top of the in-person learning. And so I think that as a leader and as teacher leaders, it's an always topic talking about how can we create more time? How can we get together more? How can we tackle this thing we really think is important? And so, that's one of the things that I really try to figure out is how can we give the teachers back more time to put the thinking in place that they need to create bigger and better opportunities for our kids.
Those were excellent comments. And I loved the statement that you made about the emotional draining, that our teachers experience. And so for me, while we're dealing with this pandemic, I always state that poverty was a pandemic. So we've had to endure significant challenges. And what we needed to focus more so than anything was our culture. And in order to create the culture, I needed to find dynamic principal leaders who were change agents and who had the ability to identify talent in others, because if you don't address the culture, you're not going to have the opportunity to do impactful work. So we started with finding administrators that were change agents and who were committed to supporting their staff through a servant leadership model. Again, in addressing the culture, we wanted our teachers to feel like it's okay to be vulnerable. As the video showed, our teachers' lounges have been converted into spa Zen-like environments. Because the work is so draining, we had to let them know that it was okay to say that, hey, listen, I'm exhausted. The work is overwhelming. I need a moment. And for us to evolve education to allow for the challenges that exist in its current state and to prepare teachers to deal with it, we needed to acknowledge that the work is demanding. And so how do you create a culture that allows everyone to be vulnerable? Because if they're vulnerable, they can say, hey, I need some help. Hey, I need a moment. But they can also say that I know that there's some things that I need to. So it allows you to institute professional development in an environment where teachers feel safe. And if they're safe and they're growing, you take the opportunity to celebrate them. And that's what we've been doing. We've changed the culture by just celebrating everyone for all of the work that they do. And that those acknowledgments have done a phenomenal job in allowing our teachers to literally feel as if they can do anything.
That's great. Thank you for sharing those points. I'm going to turn to Natalia for a bit of a research perspective here. And Natalia, what do you see education research telling us about the relationship between teacher working conditions and teacher outcomes, particularly covering the topics discussed in the documentary, teacher leadership, school leadership, and professional development?
Yes, thank you, Sarah, for this question. Very good question. What we find in research is a really strong link between teacher working conditions and teacher outcomes. And probably this is going to come as no surprise to our audience that just watched the video, that when the working conditions are favorable, outcomes for teachers are also favorable. For instance, one such outcome is job satisfaction. When teachers are satisfied with their working conditions, they tend to be happier and more satisfied with their jobs. The results of that, though, is when teachers have good job satisfaction, they're more inclined to stay teaching in their school, staying in their district, and even staying in the teaching profession. Whether or not teacher makes a decision to stay, oftentimes is affected by the working conditions. And we often see the critical role that the principals play, right? It came up many times today already. But really, a principal is not so much somebody who develops these conditions, but really somebody who facilitates the presence of professional development, of collaboration, etc., and teachers' ability to take part in this opportunities that are available to them. I will also add that there's sometimes a perception that teachers leave schools because of the composition of the student body, right? Like we hear that schools with high proportion of disadvantaged students are the ones that have a lot of turnover of teachers. When we have studies that have looked into this relationship alongside the working conditions, and what those studies find that actually it's the working conditions that account for more of teachers' decisions to stay teaching at the school or not than what the composition of the student body accounts for. So can't really overstate the importance of developing these positive working conditions.
Definitely, that's really important, Natalia. I'm going to actually head to Lucy for a quick question, and then Natalia, we can come back to you. Lucy, my question to you is, how can improving teacher leadership opportunities influence student achievement, particularly for lower performing students or students of color?
Great question. So I have the privilege of co-leading an initiative for teacher leadership around the country. We're in sort of 10 states and 50 districts called Opportunity Culture. And I guess one of the things that we've found is that the selection process is one of the most critical pieces to influencing student achievement. And so being able to select educators who have been able to previously move student growth, particularly of the students that they're being selected to serve in the schools that we work with, is probably the most important way that you can move student achievement, is make sure that they have a prior record of having done so, that they have that there's evidence during the selection process that they have moved students. I also think that there are the other thing is just sort of making sure that the teachers themselves are representative of the students that they're serving. And so having an equity lens on who is promoted into teacher leadership positions is another way to ensure that students get the teachers that they need.
Great. We're about halfway through our panel discussion. For folks joining us, I encourage you to send us a question. It looks like we had a comment from Rebecca on Facebook saying, I agree with acknowledging teachers' works and struggles while still providing support for teachers. Definitely. So for our participants, please feel free to send us comments and questions. We would love to hear from you. Otherwise, I'll keep going with my list of questions. Natalia, I'll come back to you about some research. from your work, what does research tell us about the relationships? Oh wait, did I ask that one? No. What does research tell us about the relationship between teacher working conditions and student outcomes? That's a really interesting one.
Well, you know, Sarah, you and everybody else here probably will agree that teachers are critical, right, to student success. And when we invest in teachers, really we're investing in our students. So I'll give one example. When you develop a positive working environment, improve teacher job satisfactions, teachers actually stay teaching and their experience grows, right? And we know that teachers, when they develop their experience, they actually benefit their students more. This is also, I would say that that's an equity issue, right? So when you have a lot of turnover and teachers leaving their schools, and it happens a lot with schools with lots of disadvantaged students, then those students aren't getting the benefit. They're not getting access to certified teachers, to teachers with a lot of experience to have those best positive learning outcomes. So again, I will just repeat that investing in teachers is and investing in students, they almost go hand in hand here, right? I also want to echo, I was seeing some of the comments that are coming up about the diversity in teaching profession. And it, you know, I would say that in research, or like any statistics you look up online, you definitely see that the majority of teaching profession is white and female, right? And it does not at all resemble our student population in many, many schools. And so I don't have a lot of research findings to share with you today, but we do have some initial indications, right, that having teachers and students in the classroom that look like one another has positive impact, not just on student learning, but a lot of like social and emotional student outcomes. And I would say that it's encouraging to see that in the districts that I work with, the states that I work with, there is a big shift to diversifying the teaching profession so it resembles what our students look like.
That's great. I know in Indiana, just this week, they announced some initiatives to increase the diversity of the teacher pipeline, which is really great, and maybe something Michigan could think about as well. I'm sure they are thinking about that. But Lucy, a quick question for you. What structures should schools put into place in order for teachers to be effective leaders? And how can schools assess the effectiveness of their teacher leadership systems? That seems like kind of a squishy thing to assess.
Big question. So I already mentioned selection, and I want to just reiterate the importance, I think, as you're from a district point of view or from a principal point of view, of thinking carefully about what your selection criteria for your teacher leaders are going to be. That structure is really important. We've also found that the size of the team that the teachers work with really can influence student achievement as well and other student outcomes. And so having smaller teams rather than larger teams, I know a lot of teacher leaders, both formal and informal, lead really large teams of 25 teachers and are expected to really influence the practice. And in our school, the schools that I work with, we typically say no larger than 6 to 8 team size. And so I think that you can just do a lot more intense work with a smaller team. I also just want to notice one of the biggest and most important structures is the schedule, and making sure that teachers have committed time for both planning with their teams, for observing their team teachers, and for doing their own planning. And also for getting the support that the teacher leader needs, potentially from the principal or maybe from an assistant principal, but that there's some kind of relationship where they can get support as teacher leaders as well. I guess the last structure is more like maybe a mindset, but it's kind of having the authority to lead. So principals being willing to give teacher leaders the authority to lead their teams so that they can really get in there and do the things that teachers that provide the kind of support that teachers really want. Like maybe somebody needs help with a lesson plan, or maybe somebody needs help with classroom management, but whatever it takes, that kind of mentality. So selection, team size, schedule, and giving teachers the authority to lead. And the second half of your question is, how do we measure results? And I think that is hard to answer without knowing what the goals of your teacher leadership work are. but imagining that most people's goals have to do with sort of student outcomes, teacher outcomes, influencing school culture, as we've talked a lot about already, and also influencing the student experience, then I think you obviously want to match your measurement to what your goals are. So making sure you're looking at results, I would say making sure you're looking at teacher satisfaction with the work that's going on in the school. So what kind of relationships are teachers, leaders building with their teams, with their team teachers? And then finally, I would look at impact. How many students are being impacted by the work? How many students are being impacted by the teacher leadership positions in your building? And again, looking at it with an equity lens and making sure that all students, especially students whose needs haven't historically been well met, are being supported by the teacher leadership work that you're doing in your building. So results, relationships, and sort of what is the reach of what you're trying to do.
Great. Thank you, Lucy. We got a fantastic question from a former teacher. He said we have 2 exemplary principals. Yes, we do, on this panel. What could you do if you are a teacher working with a principal who doesn't understand the importance of positive and nurturing working conditions like you both recognize? So if you've got maybe a more difficult principal, what do you suggest for those teachers? How might they address that?
I think that I appreciate the comment of exemplary principal, and that's really kind, but I know that Derek's journey has probably been like mine, and we certainly didn't start off exemplary, and we certainly both have a long way to go, I'm sure. And, this job is super humbling, because just when you think you have things worked out, COVID happens, or Billy happens, or just whatever happens. And I think what my advice to any teacher would be is just to remember that a principal has a lot on their plate and just a lot of things in their head. And sometimes they're so full that they might not remember they should be good listeners. And so don't let your message go. Keep at us and tell us what you're really needing, because most principals are really there because they want to help. And sometimes they need the help and advice from a strong-willed teacher to get them to be a better leader. And I know that my journey has made me a better person because of the teachers that have taken the time to teach me to be a better leader. And so if you're that teacher, take the time and press your principal a little bit. They'll be better for it.
Yeah, excellent response, Carol. And I would just add that, as a superintendent, it's my hope that I have phenomenal principal leaders in every building. But the reality of the situation is that these are marriages that we find ourselves in with our staff and their relationships. And sometimes you may be in a situation that isn't the best fit for you. I would hope that you're not a former or, teacher because of that situation, because the beauty of the degree is that it allows you mobility. And you have the ability, and there's a teacher shortage, you have the ability to find someone whose personalities, their values, and are aligned with yours. And so I hate to see people leave the profession because they've had a bad experience. If your experience isn't well there, hey, you have the opportunity to identify someone whose leadership style is more aligned with yours. And not that I'm trying to create a free agent market, but if it has people on the verge of wanting to leave the profession, seek a situation that just might be a better relationship for you.
Yes, thank you. And just a clarification, Dr. Coleman, you are superintendent, prior principal. Let's see. So Carol and Derek, another question for you related to the pandemic, which I know we're all still dealing with, but thinking in a positive way, thinking forward. What has your school or your district done throughout the pandemic that you will carry forward that might have started during the pandemic, but was an interesting or promising practice that you will carry forward to support teacher PD, teacher leadership, and strong school leadership?
One of the things that we've really taken to heart is that professional development is different this year. It's not happening face-to-face. And at first, I think people really thought oh, this is so weird. We're meeting in a virtual setting. And look, here we are with Detroit Public Television having a virtual conversation in our own offices, and it's no big deal. And I think we've really learned that we can do this electronically, and it has really taken down some barriers. You know, we have a dual immersion program in my building where my teachers are teaching immersion Spanish. So we have, you know, a high population of Spanish speaking families and students who also want to learn to speak Spanish. So that immersion program is there. And a lot of that professional development for us happens across the state in Detroit. And it's tricky for my teachers to get there and to do that learning. And so we've just really been excited about the, you know, virtual learning opportunities where things that were kind of a barrier for us to get to before have really changed. And so we look forward to, I think, carrying that forward and making sure that we can tap into a broader spectrum of professional development offerings, you know, wherever they are. And I think that that's really just getting started for us, but I think it has a ton of potential for us to be able to tap into things that we weren't able to access before. So that's something that we really expect to carry forward with our own learning here at school, and then the bigger community, broader community of professional development offerings.
Yeah, so that is a great question. I think that what we will take moving forward that we'll never abandon is the pandemic, or COVID, has shown us our ability to stretch ourselves. And many of our newer teachers are digital natives. They don't remember a time where technology wasn't present. While some of our veteran teachers, some may have been a little less resistant to technology because of the fear of feeling inadequate. And so we consistently work with them to support them. But this pandemic has shown people that they are far greater than they ever thought that they could be, and that you're capable of doing much more. And so moving forward, it's allowed us to provide them with greater opportunities and access to information. It's shown them, again, that they are warriors, and they can grow and expand their own skill set. And so our ability to offer PD has been expanded as a result of this pandemic, because we're now forced to utilize technology. They became better practitioners. They had the ability to multitask, because some of our teachers were teaching students who were present in a class, and then others were teaching simultaneously on the computer in a virtual space. And so what we'll take moving forward is the fact that there's nothing that will be placed before us that we can't handle, because we were successful in being able to educate children during the most challenging time in our lifetime.
Well said, for sure. One last question that came in the comments, something a little bit different from what we've been talking about, but has come up a bit, and I wanted to address it. Mikey asked, what are some of the biggest factors or challenges as to why there are not more ethnically or racially diverse teachers reflecting the demographics of their students? I'll open this up to anyone who wants to respond. I know that's not something we can get into fully in the next minute, but it'd be great to hear some of your initial thoughts.
I think that's a phenomenal question. And I actually had a debate with a nationally known celebrity on the need to have more minority teachers. And I said that the reality of it is that you don't have people who are entering the profession. And so my responsibility is to identify the most effective teacher that I can place in front of my students. While I'm looking for teachers who may have had a similar experience or who may understand the students, nothing trumps a quality teacher. And in the absence of those people being in the pool, you have a responsibility to go out and find someone who can work effectively in that space. And I don't think that color matters, in the sense that great teachers are great teachers, great people are great people. And I want minority teachers, but I'm not going to pull my hair out. I've already lost it. If I can't find them, we recruit. But the reality is that fewer have moved into the profession. And with that being our reality, and the first order of leadership is to define reality, is you want to make sure you have phenomenal people in front of kids, regardless to their color.
are people of color, and over half of the students in our schools are students of color. So it's definitely, the gap is huge between the pool and who we're serving.
Well, we are at time. Thank you all so much for participating today and attending. We hope to offer more of these live stream documentary screenings maybe later this year. So please keep in touch. Follow Detroit Public TV and REL Midwest on social media so you can be notified of any future events. And we thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.